Goalkeepers! Happy Sunday to you. This is the KeeperStop.com Goalkeeper Show, presented by KeeperStop.com, just in case you were wondering. We have a special guest today and a great topic. Topic is mental performance for athletes and goalkeepers. We all think we can fly the friendly skies and make breakaway saves, but it comes from somewhere. And our special guest today, Coach Ryan Carr, is just that performance specialist. This is a program for every athlete, for the goalkeeper, for parents supporting the development of their goalkeeper. Just to tell you a little bit about Ryan, this guy with a smiley face and the boyish good looks, is Coach Ryan Carr. He's a mental performance coach at the esteemed Barton Health Training Facility. He's training elite athletes. Ryan, say hello.
Hey everybody, how we doing?
Goalkeepers, parents, grandmas, aunts, and uncles. Anybody interested in goalkeeping, say hello as well. We love to see thumbs up, likes, shares. Anybody watching this afterwards, you can go ahead and watch it completely on Carr-driven performance on YouTube, as well as KeeperStop.com. Just to give you a little bit about Ryan, right? Ryan is a strength and conditioning certified, weightlifting, sports performance certified coach. Basically, he's a sports performing consultant, right? And, I think it's very appropriate that we talk about, sports performance and athletic performance at a time when we can't perform at all. Because what better can we do right now is train the brain, right?
Absolutely, man.
So,
yeah.
What I want to ask you, Ryan, before we even start, because I'm going to go through your laundry list of accolades and your certifications, which is why people should watch you. But, what made you get involved in, being a performance consultant or a mental performance coach?
Yeah, I think for me, it began at a really young age. My mother, she's a triathlete, and she currently owns her own Pilates studio. She was in the physical therapy world as well. My father, he's a boxer, owned his own boxing gym. So I was surrounded by athletics from a really young age and did a lot of different sports growing up, which I think is absolutely critical to anybody's development, is being a multi-sport athlete and being involved in a lot of different things, because we're going to move our bodies in different ways, right? We're going to get coached differently by different sports and different sport coaches. So that had a really big impact on my foundation growing up. And then eventually in high school, I really gravitated towards soccer, and I zoned in on that a lot. Not to say I didn't do other things recreationally, but as a high school athlete, I was like, this is the sport I want to be doing, right? I absolutely fell in love with it. I wasn't pushed into it. I just had a lot of opportunities from great coaches, parental support, friends, family, and I loved it. I mean, I just had a ton of fun, right? So I was fortunate enough to work my butt off, get really lucky, have a lot of support, and got a full scholarship to the University of Hartford. Go Hawks in Connecticut.
Raw!
So I had a great time there with, again, amazing coaches, ton of support. And being a goalkeeper, it can be a lonely position at times. You spend a lot of time sitting back there in your own head. And I noticed that growing up, that the mind game of performance, especially in soccer goalkeeping, was absolutely critical. Our minds had to be sharp because there's so much chatter going on in there when you're alone back there and maybe not getting a lot of action for a little bit. So I think I was stimulated by the mental side of it at a young age. And then after college, went on and did strength conditioning certification and coached in the college field, both soccer and strength conditioning, for about 12, 15 years. And then about 8 to 10 years ago, I really formalized my education in sport and performance psychology and went back to the master's degree. And I'm starting a doctorate degree in it right now as we speak.
Good luck starting Monday, right?
You know it.
So Ryan and I have been friends for a long, long time. Childhood friends. I'm a little older than he is, but I know Ryan. He's very driven, hence the Carr-driven performance, and this is an appropriate field for you. But all of us don't have that same drive that you have. So The reason why we wanted to do a Keeper Stop Goalkeeper show on mental performance for athletes and goalkeepers is because we all want to play and perform our best, right? And I think that you'll agree, and many other top performance coaches, goalkeeper coaches, head coaches will agree that the muscle we train the least and the most valuable muscle that we train the least is our brain. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. I think in sport performance, and you can take this into any sport, any craft, business, right? There's 3 things that we can train. Number 1, you can train like your sport-specific craft or skills. Okay, so the technical aspects, the tactical aspects, we can train that, right? And oftentimes our sport will do that for us, right? And our sport-specific coaches. That's 1. Number 2 is you can train your body, which I think we've come a long way over the past 30 years in terms of strength conditioning and sport performance, in lifting weights, getting stronger, getting more explosive, more powerful, quicker, more agile. So I think we've got that pretty well dialed in as a society. But I think the last piece of that we can train is our mind. And if I were to say one thing that could impact our performance the most, and I might be a little biased here, but it's your mind. Because how many times have we all gone into a situation and you're strong enough, you're fit enough, you're explosive enough, technically, tactically, you're good enough, but you're just not feeling confident, right? Or something threw you off. Maybe you had something go on in your training or personally in your life, and mentally you just weren't in it. If that goes, everything else goes really quick.
And I guess this is a really hot topic, not just for specific athletic performance, but coaches inspiring or cultivating a educational environment for their athletes, right? Can coaches ask a question to get players thinking about scenarios? Can we create problems to solve in training? And it doesn't even have to be in a team setting training. It could be something in a smaller environment too. So this goes much broader than performing individually. This goes to coaches. It's like, we're past those days of repetition, and that supposedly lends into consistency and focus. We've proved that to be false. We've proved that even possession drills for the sake of possession without some kind of, pressure or stimulation or problem to solve doesn't do anything. And this is the base of that. And, I think this is very important for us to discuss. So, just talk a little bit more, Ryan, and he did a little bit on it. But the reason why, not only is Ryan a goalkeeper, but he's worked at University of Hartford, Seton Hall, Princeton, Iona, and this landed him his dream gig at the moment at Barton Health Performance in Lake Tahoe. And this is where he prepares elite athletes for performance in life and in sport. And I think that's important. He's helping athletes solve problems on and off the field, have confidence on and off the field. They all lend well into one another. We all go to the gym and we feel great when we get out of the gym. And, the muscles stimulate the brain and the brain stimulates the muscles. It's vice versa. So again, preparing athletes for life and sport. He helps develop mental strategies to maximize oneself, injury prevention strategies, team coordination, dynamics, physical and mental recovery from injury. So this is a guy we should be listening to. Any and all tips that we share today, write them down. You start your own mental training, write it down in a notebook. If you could take one thing away, that's what we're looking for. So again, Ryan, as a friend of Keeper Stop, a personal friend, I appreciate you spending time. If you notice over his shoulder, he's got a foot of snow dumping on him, so he could be out, social distancing and snowshoeing instead of being with us.
Happy to be here, man. Happy to be here.
So first question for you, and this is a big one, and if this is the only one we ever answer, we've done a service. Why is mental performance so important, and what is it?
Yeah. So I would call it mental performance. I define it very simply, right? It's the art of crushing our goals and enjoying that process and really maximizing ourselves when it matters most. Okay, so it's one thing, like you mentioned earlier, to be training in a practice session. It's a whole nother ball game when you had pressure, when you had competition, when you had scouts watching you, or a national championship on the line or a state championship. So it's really dealing with that pressure, right? Being confident in that whole process. And I look at it at a couple of different ways. Number one, I want people to be content in their journey when it comes to sporting events. Working in college athletics, I saw too many athletes coming in as freshmen on full scholarships, and they had kind of the life by their hands, and they were miserable. To me, there's a huge problem there, right? They'd fallen out of love with their sport, and they weren't passionate about it anymore. So to me, that's a big problem. We've got to be content, right? We've got to have clarity on what our goals are, so that every day when we're training, we're very focused on where we want to go. All right. And then we've got to be consistent with those training processes, and then we've got to be confident in it. So those 4 C's are absolutely huge to our success, right? So anything that we can do to create that consistency, confidence, contentment, and clarity within our mind and training, that's really going to streamline our focus to what we should be doing each day, how we should be doing it, and making sure that we're having fun along the way. And a big part of that is going to be goal setting. I know we'll touch on that in a little bit, but those are my big 4 C's. We got to make sure that we nail those down.
Do you think part of the problem is that in youth player development, we truly only focus on the physical development? We tell players they're great all the time. We put them in situations where they're successful all the time, and I don't think we give them an opportunity to problem solve, to fail, and then succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a fine line there, right? If you're coming in every day and you're getting beat down, you're failing, then that's going to have a negative impact on your development. On the other side, if everything is always sunshine and rainbows and you're always succeeding and it's too easy, then again, you're not going to really enjoy that process. So we got to find that sweet spot, and that's going to be different for everybody. We've got to challenge ourselves in our training, and as coaches, as we're setting up our training, we want to kind of dance with that line of creating circumstances where we have micro failures, but then most importantly, us as coaches and as athletes, we know really the skills to deal with that and how to come back stronger the next time, right? It's like lifting a weight. If you lift a 5-pound weight and you can do it 100 times, you're not going to get any better. You've got to test that muscle. You got to stress it enough so that maybe you come to a point of failure, and then next time you can add a little bit more once you're able to hit the prescribed reps. So we've got to train our mind like a muscle. We've got to stress it, but we can't overstress it.
Gotcha. One of the things I want to talk today, and I'm going to ask a question, and then I'm going to step away and do my taxes and bake some cookies over here, because I know that the amount of knowledge you're about to drop right now is going to be ridiculous. I don't think Zuckerberg is ready for the amount of space and bandwidth this is going to take up. I want to talk about goal setting.
Yeah.
It is an overwhelming to many athletes and parents. Everybody talks about goal setting. What are your goals? What are you going to do when you grow up? What do you want out of life? What do you want out of training? What do you want out of soccer? Goal setting has become such an abstract concept, a heavy burden. What is goal setting? Short-term and long-term. Any strategies that you can help with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's break it down and simplify it. 3 types of goals. Okay, we have our outcome goal. All right, that's like, I want to win a national championship. I want to be a professional soccer player. I want fill in the blank. Go big here, dream big. Okay, then we've got our performance goals. So let's take the example, I want to become a professional soccer player. Okay, so that's my outcome goal. My performance goal is I want to have a goals against average of less than 0.65 per game. So I want to let up less than 0.65 goals per game. Okay, other performance goals might be a certain save percentage. Okay, so that's specifically performance-wise what I want to be achieving. And then we've got our process goals. If we're always focused on the outcome of becoming that professional soccer player, it can be overwhelming. It can induce a ton of anxiety. So then we take that next step down. Let's look at our performance goals. All right, I want to have a goals against average of fill in the blank, 0.65. Now, in order to get there, we've got to focus on the process. So this comes to our third one, the process goals. Process goals are this. I'm going to sleep 8 hours every single night. I'm going to make sure I get in 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every night. Other process goal is I'm going to make sure my feet are set when the striker is about to hit the ball. So by focusing on the process, we know if I get that sleep, if I get that nutrition, if I make sure I'm in a good position and I'm set when the ball's about to be struck, that's going to give me a better chance of achieving my performance goal, or that 0.65 goals against average, which is going to help me become a professional soccer player. So I think when we break it down to the big outcome, the performance, but then focus on the process, that's going to allow us to have a lot more control over the situation, and we're going to enjoy the process a whole lot more. It breaks it down to like snackable, as you say, Christian, snackable, bite-sized chunks of things we can have.
Very good. I spoke to John Cohn about this at length, goal setting as well, how he deals with his professional athletes, how you deal with your professional athletes. What kind of goals do you set at the practice level? What could be, using goalkeeping as an example, we're both goalkeepers, the majority of people on this group are goalkeepers or athletes. What would be examples that you could do on a daily basis and then weekly basis to kind of start stringing those good habits together?
Absolutely. I think number one is have intention with your training. Don't just go to the field like, oh, I'm going to practice today. There's a big difference between practicing and training. Practicing, you show up, you do a bunch of stuff, hopefully you get better. Training, you have an intention. You say, okay, today I'm going to be working on, fill in the blank, extension diving. So let's break that down even more. My goal for today is to work on my extension diving. All right, that's my outcome goal, is to become better at extension diving. Okay, my performance goal is going to be, maybe you measure what your jumping capabilities are, okay? And then your process goals, so you set a specific kind of performance goal for how far you can jump. All right, then your process goals are, all right, I'm going to make sure that my first motion is I'm set in a good position. My feet are right below my hips. My next process goal is I step on a 45-degree angle in the direction of where the ball's going. Okay, the second one is I push off and I drive my opposite leg across. So really focusing on breaking those things down is going to be huge. And then within your training as a goalkeeper or as a coach, set it up so you kind of start with small things that you're achieving, you build some momentum, and then you can build it up. Like any progression in a training program, maybe you start from your knees and then you're going from a half kneeling position, and then you're going from a full position, and you know where the ball's going, but then it becomes, you have 2 strikers that are hitting the ball and you're not really sure which ones. You've got to just add elements in to make it harder, but build your confidence as you go.
Yeah, simple to complex.
Absolutely.
I just think that this is something that's underappreciated from a coaching perspective. We go through the motions of like, we're going to make this athlete better with power diving or breakaways, whatever the case may be, but we forget about the mental side. It's not just the physical components, but it's a mental side.
So let me touch on that real quick, because if you want to embed that mental side in, say you're somebody who's not really confident with a power dive or an extension dive, right? I think we can find ways within our mind before the session even starts to start training our mind. So here's an example. The great Dan Gaspar, as you know, right? He's one of my mentors and fantastic. Yeah.
Master motivator.
Fantastic. Just amazing coach. One of the best out there, right? So one of the things that Dan was so great about was he would get you into a state of mind that allowed you to feel so much more confident. One of the things that we used to do was he kind of nicknamed me when I was playing for him at Hartford, nicknamed me the Terminator. Okay, and I would take on this persona when we would go into training of like, all right, Ryan, this is going to be a really hard training session. Who do you want to be today? Do you want to be the Terminator? Do you want to be Rocky Balboa? Like, those are my 2 guys, right? So he would ask me, okay, what would the Terminator do here? What would Rocky Balboa do? Tell me about some qualities. What's the self-talk? What are things that they would say to themselves before they're about to start a drill or when they're fatigued in a drill, right? So incorporating that self-talk right into our training was absolutely huge as well.
So do you think self-talk is important before the training session because it helps build confidence or focus?
Both. So I would go a step further. Self-talk is something that we can either A, listen to, or B, create. And I think first we've got to start by listening to it, because we've got to notice what's going on there. If you're in the goal and you're saying, man, I'm slow today, I'm not feeling good, my legs feel heavy, you've got to notice that before you change it to, hey, I'm going to crush this, I've got this today, right? So it starts with noticing it and just being aware of it and just sit in that space for a little bit, right? Just notice what's going on in your head. Second is now we start to create it, okay? I got this, I'm strong, I'm confident. And create it so that it's something that you want. But we've got to determine what that is before the session, not when we add stress, when we add fatigue into it. Because as soon as we add stress and fatigue, having trained people in really intense atmospheres for a lot of years, as soon as that happens, negative self-talk starts just overwhelming us, and that'll take over. So create it, listen to it first, create it, and then start to implement it into training. And even in your warm-up, as coaches, stop your athletes in their warm-up. Hey, what are you saying to yourself right now? I got this. Okay, great, let's go. Or I'm gonna crush it. Great, let's go. Or, you know what, I feel like crap. Okay, tell me about that. What's going on there? Well, I'm just not feeling confident. My legs are really sore. I had a hard lifting session yesterday. Okay, let's work through that. So you had a hard lifting session, that's part of the process, right? You're supposed to be sore, yeah. Okay, then let's manage that and work through it.
Do you have any personal stories that you can share with us? Because I mean, you've worked with NCAA athletes to Olympic athletes. Any self-talk stories that you can share with us that don't include any names, but include examples of success?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I had a soccer player when I was working at Seton Hall University, and this guy, he was the hardest working player I've ever worked with in my life. And he was so driven and such a high achiever. While that was his best attribute, it was also his biggest enemy, because at times he would overtrain, he would get injured. So we really had to kind of notice what was going on in his head ahead of time. And for him, it was always like, I gotta be the best. I gotta be the best. And it was so big, it was such a big concept, right? So we changed that to best now. And what that meant was, it was more like he has to be the best version of himself right now. He doesn't have to be the best player on the field. He doesn't have to be the best player in the country or in the world. He just has to be the best version of himself right now. And we created really short self-talk, so it's something that he could incorporate right into training and right into his game. So it was best now. If you lost the ball, best now, go get it back, right? So we incorporated a lot of that into his training. That's
great. I'm sure if you reach out to Coach Carr after this at Carr Driven Performance, he'll share any of his success stories or tips on goal setting and other topics. Something I want to get back to, because I think it's not talked about enough, is that check-in. Coaches and players checking in prior to training, checking in on a daily basis to figure out where they're at, so that there is open dialogue and communication. Can you pull up that check-in sheet? So basically, I just think that's something that you do with elite athletes, and it's something that we as youth coaches, college coaches, maybe even parents start adopting as well.
Yeah. Do you have it up there?
Yeah, we're getting it up right. We're getting it up right now.
I want to touch on that, because I think having, again, intention when you're going into training is really important, and understanding transitions in our lives is critical. So let me give you an example. Say you're going to the training pitch and you're getting dropped off by mom or dad, or you're driving yourself there, whatever age you might be at. But when you arrive to the field, there might be a certain spot in the field or a certain parking area that you park in, or a sign that you see. But I really encourage my athletes to create a repetitive thing that you do when you get to the field, so that when you get there, maybe you say 3 words to yourself. Say you get to the field, you notice a certain sign, a certain way that you park every time. When you get there, take literally 10 seconds and just notice, hey, I'm transitioning from me at school or me at home or me at work to now I'm transitioning into the training self, right? So stopping, pausing, and even saying to yourself 3 words: I'm cool, I'm calm, I'm confident, right? And being really intentional with that is huge. And it's almost like you're flipping the switch. You're changing, you're doing a mental dress rehearsal of, I'm switching from me at school or me at home to now this is me, soccer me, right? So I've got to be locked in, laser focused. I'm cool, I'm calm, I'm confident. So that's a really important thing to be doing.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I mean, I think that wellness check-in from coaches, from parent perspective, there isn't enough dialogue before training. There isn't enough dialogue, with parents. We're always action-oriented. We rarely do the mental check-ins. I mean, if you think about it from a youth perspective, right? There's so many stresses every day, from school to friends to emotions, and it's important to figure out where you are from a coach standpoint, from a parent standpoint, just so we can provide support. But I also think that it's also important to, as you said, self-reflect, or to figure out where you're at right now, so you could start changing gears, as you said. So I love that, taking a pause in your day before training to clear your mind, like Coach Gaspar used to do, right? About walking onto the field, right?
Cross that line.
Yeah, as soon as you cross that line, you're ready to go. So on the other side of the line, on the other side of the field or goal box, whatever that line is that you've established, you're a brother, sister, a boyfriend, girlfriend, you're a student, you're a child, whatever the case is. Once you step over that line onto that field, you look the part, you play the part, your brain is switched on, your shoes are tied, you're tucked in. Your mental preparation is done off the field. Once you get on that field, you're ready to go and you're in it. That's one of the things that I take to every training session for my goalkeepers and field players, whatever I'm working with. So, I mean... on that note, I would say, so we want to flip that switch, right? You want to cross that line and be ready. But if you haven't prepared yourself to walk across that line ahead of time, it's going to be a lot harder, right? So having that awareness, like you were mentioning, that check-in of, hey, how is my sleep today before I get to the pitch, right? How was my nutrition today? How's my nutrition yesterday? And what'll happen is you'll start to notice patterns that happen when you eat a certain type of food, or when you get a certain amount of rest, or when training was a different way yesterday compared to the day before. And then you'll start to find these secret recipes that work well for you individually. So that's what that whole check-in and awareness is about. If I know, all right, when I wake up in the morning and I get 10 minutes of yoga in before we're getting to the pitch, and when I get there, man, something's clicking, right? It just feels right. Well, then when you become aware and you're doing that and you're creating those habits, awesome. On the other side, when maybe you wake up in the morning and you start off by scrolling on social media, or you turn on the news, or and you're like, man, you get to the field and it feels off. Something's not right. When you begin to notice that and be aware of it, then you can start to streamline your everyday processes to really perform at your best and achieve what you want on that day. Cool. Another big thing that I want to talk about, we've hit some heavy topics already. We've hit goal setting. We've hit parts of self-talk. I mean, there's so many aspects that creeps into the last thing of that self-talk, I think, and it's a major topic, is dealing with mistakes. We all have made mistakes, and we all recover from them differently. I know that as a college athlete, I would let it consume me, and I was a very good goalkeeper. I could make some great saves, but if I made a mistake, there was no getting out of it. I'd bang the ground, hit the goalpost, and it just took me out of it. How do we deal with mistakes? How do we recover from them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked that, because I can empathize with you there, Christian. I was the same way. I think as goalkeepers, we're super critical of ourselves. We have to be, right? Because we're held to a very high standard. When it comes to mistakes, it's all in how we view them. We can view them as failure, or we can view them as feedback. Okay, and a lot of this work is based around Dr. Carol Dweck and the growth mindset. But when we make a mistake, if we look at it as something permanent and I did this thing and I can never get better at it, that's going to send us into that negative spiral that you and I were just kind of describing. And then one mistake becomes 2, and 2 becomes 3, and 3 becomes 4, and then it's a bad game, and then it's a bad week of practice, and then it can just spiral out of control, right? But if we look at mistakes as feedback, that's very different. Now we're looking at it as, I made this mistake. What would I do different next time? How can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? So the way in our mind that we're processing it, whether it be an A, failure, or B, feedback, that's going to be your key to success. Right? It doesn't mean that you have to like making mistakes. Nobody does. But understand it's a part of the game. It's a part of the process. So the way you view it, that's your choice, and that's on you, and that's your responsibility.
Let's chew on that for a sec. So feedback versus failure. Obviously part of that, the pressure that we're under all the time. I mean, we're under pressure to perform. So many youth athletes, goalkeepers are especially under that microscope for making mistakes. It is so difficult to go through that process, that learning process. You've read Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant's quotes. You've read, countless leaders on how they've made poor business decisions before making right ones. I think as coaches and parents and players, we have to understand it's part of the process. We have to fail. We have to make 50 mistakes until you figure out the correct way. And if you really think about it, right? It's we both have 2-year-olds or plus 2-year-olds almost, right? Plus or minus. Think about a child walking. How many times do they fall before they have the confidence of standing up? Well, in youth sports, it's the same, right? We're learning a jump shot. We are learning a crossover. We are learning the splay breakaway save. Each time we try to add a new tool, like walking or running or whatever else, every time we add a new tool to that toolbox that help us be a better athlete, to make better decisions, to perform better, that's a new learning curve. And I think we're always so consumed with that overall arching performance indicator of the W or the loss. And that's what we gauge success and failures on. Parents, players, and coaches, we're all part of that same cycle. It's frustrating as a coach, as a goalkeeper coach, where you've been many times, where you can have to tell a head coach, it's like, yeah, it's a mistake, but it's better. It was the right decision, the wrong execution. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to failure, we have to fail. But as coaches, we've got to create the environment to teach the skills for success later on, to reflect and take that time afterwards to continue to improve, right? And it doesn't happen overnight. And it takes a lot of repetitions in order to work through those failures. Some just practical things that I'll do with my athletes. If they have a really bad day, and I train a lot of ski and snowboard athletes now, and mountain bikers and motocross and stuff here in the mountains in Tahoe. But if they have a really bad day on the hill, as we call it, or on the mountain, it's all right, at the end of the day, go home and let's reflect on that. Do me a favor and write down one thing you did well today. In the midst of all those mistakes, just give me one thing you did well. Okay, now give me one thing that you learned today. Just one thing. Okay, and again, look at the failures, turn them into feedback. What's one thing you learned? And now give me one thing that you're grateful for today. Because gratitude can be a really powerful tool in pulling us out of like that kind of that narrowed hole that we can go down when we do make mistakes, right? So pulling yourself out of it and keeping perspective on things is also really, really helpful when we're dealing with mistakes, okay? Yeah, you let up a goal. In the grand scheme of things, later on that day or the next day, when you really pull yourself out, how much of an impact is that going to have on your life? In reality, probably not a whole lot. So keep things in perspective as well, right? We're, as goalkeepers, I constantly think we're pretty serious about our craft, because when we make a mistake, serious consequences happen. The ball's in the back of the net. But in comparison to the rest of our life, how serious is that really, right? So keep perspective on things. Do that daily reflection of gratitude, one thing you learned, one thing you did well, and keep a journal on stuff. Write it down if that helps you out, or do a video. Grab your phone and do a quick video. Hey, one thing I learned today, and then maybe at the end of the week you go back and look at 7 videos of the past 7 days. So get creative, use a medium that's going to work well for you. I never take the approach of it's kind of one size fits all, but we're all different in how we learn. So that's huge.
So all great suggestions on dealing with mistakes and how to overcome them in future performances. But we also have 90 minutes, and we've seen De Gea make a mistake in minute 2. I'm sure you have snowboarders that catch an edge the wrong way and have to recover. What kind of tips do you have to bring goalkeepers, to bring athletes back to the now to finish that performance?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll go back to Coach Gaspar's, what time is it now and where are we here? So having some sort of a mantra or a word in your mind that you utilize to get you back in the present moment is huge. One thing I'll say to myself personally when I'm playing is, I got this, and that just kind of snaps me back in. That's my little cue to keep me in the present moment. Again, having like a mistake ritual when you do make a mistake. Maybe it's clap your hands and say, I got this. Having those rituals are going to be really helpful. One piece of advice that I got as a player was, and this just stuck with me, was, Ryan, play the game 30 seconds at a time. It's 30 seconds at a time. Right now you're in these 30 seconds. For these 30 seconds, be as good as you can possibly be. Okay, because when I'm in that 30 seconds, the previous 30 seconds I can't control, right? That happened is in the past. I can learn from it, but I can't change it. The other side, I can't predict what's going to happen 30 seconds from now. But when I do 30 seconds at a time at a 90-minute game, I end up doing that 180 times. Boom, there you go. Now I've got my game. So for 30 seconds at a time, I just try and be as good as I can possibly be. That's really helpful. Another analogy you might think of is, say you're driving your car at night. Well, what's the first thing you're going to do when you get in the car? You got to turn it on and flick on the headlights. Your headlights are only going to let you see about 200 feet in front of you. You can't see past that. So sometimes that can be the best thing. While I might be driving back to the great state of Connecticut from California, that's awesome, but I can only do 200 feet at a time if it's pitch black out and I have my headlights on. So think of the game like that. You have your outcome goal, you want to win, you want to get a shutout, whatever it might be, but at the end of the day, 30 seconds at a time, focus on the process.
And going back to what we spoke about before, right, is also wins and losses. Yeah, they matter, but in the grand scheme of things, it's how your individual performance was through the duration of that match or that run. It's not, you're not defined by one instance, right? It's a body of work.
If you go back to those kind of those outcome goals, those performance goals, and those process goals, you can evaluate yourself 3 different ways. The outcome is, I want to win the game. I want to get a shutout. Say I lose the game and we lost 3-0. Okay, did I achieve my outcome goal? No. All right, that's a bummer. What was my performance goal? Okay, my performance goal maybe was to communicate with my defenders at least 6 times in the first 20 minutes of the game. Okay, that's something you can measure. Did you hit that? Yes. All right, boom. Now you've got a win in that category. All right, and now one of my process goals was to have fantastic positioning during the game by making sure my feet were set and I was covering my near post. Did I do that? Boom. Yeah, I did. So now I lost the outcome goal, okay, but I have 2 wins in the process goals and the performance goals. So how was the day? In reality, it's a bummer you lost. We all want to win. You let up 3 goals. That's a bummer. But really, it could be a win if you look at the 2 versus 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's not enough of us that, and of course, at our mature ages, we can now reflect back and be like, oh man, we were, naive in thinking that we could, conquer the world and, perform at like a pro level when we weren't pros. I mean, every day we're learning something. We've covered a ton today. I want us to leave some parting thoughts with the people that logged in and saw us on Facebook Live, the streaming event. Thank you very much for joining us. And again, this is going to be replayed on Facebook and YouTube, so you can pause and rewatch and really digest what Coach Carr is talking about. You know, the thing that I constantly tell goalkeepers and try to educate even some of the coaches that I work with is related to goalkeepers, is that everybody makes mistakes. We all make them. It's part of the process. And goalkeepers have a hard time of really understanding, you know, mistakes and how to overcome them. But again, I think a lot of that comes from that we think that we have to be responsible for everybody. You know, for every decision, for every pass, for every situation, and that's difficult. You know, as goalkeepers or as athletes, we have to understand, soccer players, we have 10 other people on the field that are also making decisions, that are also performing, and they're going to make mistakes. Our job is to perform the best we can with what we're given. The best we can with what we're given. And that could be skill level, that could be athleticism, that could be the technical knowledge we have at that time. I mean, there's so many factors that go into that, but I think that's important, that our best and our best performance, there's degrees of that. And I think that's what's important. It's not just the physical body, but those degrees of performance happen up here. And that's where the beauty of this conversation lies, and hopefully starts other conversations.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Things that I think about, first, I appreciate you having me on. I love talking about this stuff. This is my passion. But things I think about that I like to leave people with is let go of perfection, but always strive towards it. Understanding that it's a process of working towards that. Work towards the best version of you, and like you said, whatever you have given to you, take every piece of that and utilize it, and then strive and work towards improving yourself in all those areas, because we do have a lot of control over things, and focus on the things that we can control, that being our attitude, our effort, our training practices, and then let go of the things we can't control, which are other people's attitudes, other people's ideas, other people's mistakes. So focus on what you can control, and most importantly, have fun, man. I mean, it's meant to be an amazing sport and what we do, so go out there and enjoy the process.
After all this, it's a game, right? So it's important to laugh and smile, and that will help us compete, as your paradigm helps say. Our guest again today is Coach Ryan Carr, a mental performance coach at the esteemed Barton training facility, training high-level athletes. I'm sure if you have future questions, you can reach out to, where do you want people to contact you, Ryan?
Yeah, you can just hit me up on Instagram, on Carr Driven Performance. You can also follow our facility at Barton Performance on Instagram. But you can hit me up directly on Carr Driven Performance on Instagram. Highly
suggest parents, coaches definitely. This is something that will build a better team, and you will have more wins at the end of the day. I mean, I know this from a fact. I mean, when we won college championships or got to the NCAA tournament, we didn't have the best players at times, but we had the best team. If you want to have the best team, this is the stuff that's missing, is this brain training. You know, this is what's going to impact performance. So again, Coach Carr, thank you very much. We miss you on the East Coast. Look forward to getting you back here, or we'll do this again on the West Coast. I wish I was in a foot of powder behind you. 6 feet away, of course, at the moment.
Yeah.
Best to the Carr family, and goalkeepers, parents, coaches alike, please reach out to Ryan. Make sure you keep in contact with us for any questions. Thanks again for tuning into the KeeperStop.com Goalkeeper Show on mental performance for athletes and goalkeepers. Enjoy your weekend, and hopefully this will all be behind us soon. Fingers crossed, hands washed. We're going to be back on the field soon. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Take care.